Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ball and Breakfast Podcast with Wayne. I'm Patrick, coming to you for Week 14. We are going to go over 4 hard-hitting matchups this weekend in the NFL and round it off with a very interesting question at the end about, MVPs and some of the guys that we have in the running that are not quarterbacks. So stick around; it's going to be a really fun one. We are here, with a couple of folks that help to keep the show going, and the same way are been helpful in promoting us. But the Sharps app, take a look. We've got our referral code down there. Make sure to hit that specifically for Wayne and myself, so you can support this podcast, keep it going. In the same sense, look at Tight Nutrition. You can get 10% off products there. Full line for those that work out, all facets of a workout they cover. So check out their products as well. Give us a like, subscribe to this channel anywhere you're at. Comment always, send us messages anywhere where we have message boxes. We're always happy to go over anything you may ask. But without further ado, we will kick it off with the first matchup for Week 14 that we're going to cover. The Buffalo Bills going on the road to take on the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Man, this Bills team and this Chiefs team, kind of coming in here like a little rugged, right? I think that's my feeling. This isn't the best Bills team, and this isn't the best Chiefs team we've seen in recent years, right? But this is a really good Chiefs defense, and I think that's kind of what's setting them apart, in my opinion, in this matchup, especially at Arrowhead, at the Chiefs' home. The Bills have struggled on the road. I think that's one key thing I'm looking at here. Bills are 1-4 on the road and 5-2 at home, so they're very much up for the home cooking, and this is on the road here. So Chiefs, lost last week, kind of a surprise to the Packers in a way. I was kind of thinking about that, but I held back a little bit there because I hate the Packers. So anyway, Chiefs, they tend to win, though, past couple of seasons, obviously. I mean, they're a winning organization, good teams, good coaching. They know how to bounce back after these losses. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs. Chiefs, they've been deadly. I think I think that they'll be able to get a turnover off of Josh Allen of some sort. The spread looks like it's 2.5 in favor of the Chiefs. I'm going to go with the over here in favor of the Chiefs, actually. I think that they'll be able to win by, maybe a touchdown or something. I'm kind of leaning that direction just because the defense, they're still playing well. It's just the offense. They've been up and down, not be able to, put on consistent drives out there. I think that's been their main detractor. But I think, again, they'll be able to bounce back. Andy Reid, I think he's going to be more determined than ever, maybe to take away the play calling duties from Matt Nagy, our beloved Matt Nagy. So I don't know. I'm feeling fairly good that I think the Chiefs come victorious and beat the spread over here. What are your thoughts, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm going the other way with this one. I think Buffalo's played a lot of teams really tight this year. They could have a completely different record if they just close the door on a lot of these games that they were in. Last one before the bye was against the Eagles. Took them all the way to the brink. I mean, they did have this game kind of slip through their hands, but in the same way, I think that Josh Allen's really reacting well so far to Joe Brady, calling the shots for the offense. Feels like folks are getting a little bit more involved. Glad to see Gabe Davis back on the board. I mean, nothing like the 3 touchdown performance he had against KC a couple of years ago, but same sense, like they're always looking for new folks to get involved. And I think they've done a good job at starting to, spread it around, getting Diggs' work as well. But this team's just been, I mean, too close to a lot of tight games this year to not, prevail in one of these bigger victories. In the same sense for KC, it's like everything we were talking about last week, we were covering them versus the Packers. It's like they're just not looking right. They're looking a little, off for Chiefs standards. They've kind of let games fall through their fingertips too, playing down to the level of their competition. I mean, we all saw the pass interference calls that were missed against MVS, Kelsey toward the end of that last game in Green Bay. But in the same sense, it's like, why does it even have to come to those points for a team like that? I mean, if they're, battling for the Super Bowl, like we all expect, them to kind of walk through the AFC and just take their throne and kind of see what happens against their opponent in the NFC. It's like they shouldn't be in these type of matchups against teams that are average to good at best, and it's like yeah, I don't know. They didn't create a lot of pressure against Jordan Love. Mahomes, for his standards, has looked, I don't know, kind of average, man. Honestly, like kind of average this year. I mean, I don't think he's even in the running for MVP. I don't know, we'll talk about it when we get there, but it's like I think there are a handful of quarterbacks this year that have definitely stepped up and have put up way more, counting stats versus a Patrick Mahomes, but also probably meant more, to their team in this regular season. So encouraged to see Pacheco go against what I was saying about him last week. I mean, he really had an awesome game on the ground. Like he was, over 100 yards, but just looked like he was, you know, chopping his way to, extra yards after contact, multiple carries that I watched, in that game. So, overall, it's like these teams are very much in the same ballpark as one another. I mean, the Chiefs have had the better year. I just think, I think Buffalo can get this win. I feel like the last time they matched up, I want to say Buffalo, win over in that matchup. I think they have confidence enough against the Chiefs to not be, threatened to go into Arrowhead and kind of, seeing Mahomes and the defending champs and things like that. So, they need a win. I think they get one here, and I think it'll be, about a field goal apart in terms of, final score.
Yeah. I think the last matchup the Bills did when it was like 24-20, I believe, last year, right? They've tried to make it more of an annual tradition now between Josh Allen and Mahomes, especially after that wild playoff game that they had there. So, but yeah, no, they've split. I think the past couple matchups has been back and forth. I think the past 2 years between the two. So, we'll definitely see kind of what happens here. But yeah, like you were saying, Patrick Mahomes has not played his best brand of football. He was, I think, the front runner, at least on the betting lines for MVP. Now, it's Brock Purdy that's hurdled everybody, and then Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, and Tua are all ahead of him now. So yeah, interesting how the NFL MVP kind of just has shifted now that Brock Purdy has the full arsenal of weapons. With Kyle Shanahan obviously calling the shots there. So and Jalen Hurts, he has I think 10 interceptions now. So it's one of those things for NFL quarterback MVPs that if they have a bunch of interceptions, then the less likely is that they're going to be having winning the MVP there. So not too many of those times where Brett Favre, when he won his MVPs and such, where he was passing, and threw like 20 interceptions or 17 interceptions and won the MVP, like those were seen as his down years, and kind of similar thing I think towards any quarterback against their MVP case. And Brock Purdy, I think he only has like 6 interceptions compared to like 22 touchdowns at this point of the season. So yeah, a lot of things I think shaping in favor with regards to Mahomes or Brock Purdy for MVP as of now. But yeah, back to the whole game there, like for Bills Chiefs, man, yeah, it'll be a good one for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I just have a feeling. I don't know. I guess I'm a Chiefs fan now in a way. Like I don't know if it's Taylor Swift or what, but I just have a feeling that this Chiefs defense, like they're gonna hold them into this game. So
Yeah, I mean, very possible. I would say, Chiefs are obviously the favorites here. I imagine a lot of the bets going into this game, or analysts that may watch across like Fox, CBS, they'll probably put their picks down for KC in this one. Yeah, if Buffalo loses, I mean, I feel like their season's going to be over. So, and I think in a lot of ways, like they really want to pick this up. I mean, their defense is too good. Their offense has actually been too good this year as well to just kind of fall flat now. So, yeah, they'll need a big one here, but we'll just have to see what happens.
yeah, for sure.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, their schedule just it's not the nicest. I mean, they got a couple good games, but yeah, after this Chiefs, I mean, they're 6-6 right now, but after this Chiefs game, they got Cowboys, albeit in Buffalo, Chargers, still a talented team, but and they're gonna be playing in LA, Patriots. Okay, that's a dub, but then yeah, then they got the Dolphins and Miami. So yeah, it's not this definitely is a must win, I think, for them for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean they're right there. Yeah, they need to win. Otherwise, I mean, I'm assuming, and it's kind of crazy to say. I mean, I know like our favorite Bills fan over at Stuff About Sports would want to fire, Sean McDermott. I mean, he's been, kind of pounding on the table for that one for the last, few weeks that I've watched over from their content and stuff. But man, it just seems like a coach that's like, I don't know what he is, like got a 600 plus winning percentage and stuff. And, has obviously made the Bills super relevant. It's like, he could probably get fired, man. He could probably, get fired if they've already let go of Ken Dorsey, who I thought they had a lot of respect for. And it's like, this whole thing could completely change up as we go into the offseason.
Yeah, I wonder who if he wants that. And I haven't heard anything what he said about who would replace it. Like, can we get Brian Dable back? Like, I mean, Josh Allen played pretty well under Brian Dable, so and Dable doesn't really have too much out there right now. I don't know if they can get Caleb or Drake May. I don't know, but what Josh Allen brings to the table. So yeah, interesting how this thing will shake up. If the Bills aren't able to make the playoffs this season.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if the Giants would be interested in that, like maybe like a trade of some kind for the rights to have Dable come back. And I mean, maybe the Giants will look at that too, given how this year's gone for them. But
Yeah.
that's an interesting point, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. In our next one, we've got the Ravens hosting the Los Angeles Rams.
Oh man, this is a great matchup. I think I'm glad you picked this one to kind of cover here. But Lamar and Harbaugh as like favorites, especially for like 6 points or higher, they tend to not do well against the spread at least. So Cooper Cup on the Ram side, he's healthy, just hasn't played up to kind of where he's been at least in historically. So we'll see if he's able to break out a little bit more maybe in this game. Do you want to give out a shout for sure to Puka Nakua? Like, if it weren't for CJ Stroud and this historic, QB season, right? Like, he would definitely be number one with regards to the NFL Rookie of the Year race. Just he's got 1,000 yards plus now, 77 receptions. I think the last time I checked. So, like, having a marvelous season. Where would the Rams be without them? But Rams, they're in the playoff picture. Actually, they're in the playoff picture at the moment. I think right at that 7th seed there. So, they're definitely fighting to keep themselves in at play there. Look great against the Cardinals. Blew out the Browns as well. So they're coming in hot against what many call, at least right now, as maybe probably the top contender in the AFC, just given the way that the Chiefs have been playing it recently. So all that being said, hey, look, I'm looking at the spread right now. It's at 7 in favor of the Ravens. Definitely give me the under. I think for the Rams to cover. I think the Rams will definitely cover just the way that they've played. Will they win? I'm still gonna go with the Ravens for the dub here. Call me playing the favorites a little bit and reluctant to kind of give a road victory to an underdog here, but I'm also a Ravens kind of fan as well. So I'm gonna say that the Ravens, the defense, they'll help pull it off for them. The Ravens offense hasn't looked great, and the Rams run defense. I think they're middle of the pack, and the Ravens, that's kind of what they do. So I think they'll be able to run the ball just enough, and hopefully they don't commit enough turnovers for the Rams to take advantage of here. But yeah, I'm going to pick the Ravens to win, but I think the Rams, they'll cover that 7 spread.
And I got the Rams to win. I'm gonna take
Oh,
them going into Baltimore and doing it, man. Stafford looked amazing last week, like you were saying with Nakua. Others, Kyron Williams is back. I mean, he's put up a couple of monster performances back to back, weeks since coming off his own injury. This offense looks like it's clicking into high gear. I want to say the Browns are number one in defense, or were very close to that going into last week. And, the Rams just kind of had their way. For me, Baltimore, coming off a bye, so they got a little bit of rest, but the week prior just felt like, looked a little, kind of flat. Again, like nobody really had, any sort of marquee performances. They are, looking for answers, I think, without Mark Andrews on the outside. I mean, you go down that roster and it's kind of like, all right, well, who are your number one, number two options, kind of going across the offense. I think that puts a lot more, pressure on Lamar Jackson. I think he's the kind of guy who needs, all the help he can get in the offensive game. I mean, I love obviously his athleticism and everything he does on the ground with his feet. But I think when he has those superior weapons is where, he becomes extremely dangerous. He's got all sorts of options and things like that. It's kind of, hard to predict what the offense is really going to call. I don't know. Just for me, it feels like Baltimore, we get to this time of year, year after year, and they've got that opportunity to cement themselves as, the best team in the league or, taking that next step. And I feel like they at times kind of always take one back, and it's like they end up, finding themselves in the middle of the pack in the playoff, tree for what it is. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, the Rams, they're playing 500 ball. They're completely unpredictable as well. I mean, they're prone to big losses, and luckily they've been super competitive this year. But just with the way they came out last week and kind of seeing like what momentum they could build, with a win in Baltimore, I think it's totally possible. And yeah, I don't know. My gut's just telling me pick the Rams, and I'm gonna do that.
I mean, hey, they're playing the best football all year, right? I think for them. So, like you mentioned, Stafford having one of his better seasons, of late, like kind of playing that where he was playing at that Super Bowl level, at least right now, and he's developed that chemistry with Nakua. Still, maybe more so needs to develop a little bit more with Cooper Cup a little bit more. I don't know how banged up he is right now at the moment. But yeah, their defense has been playing pretty solid and keeping teams at bay. And I just think that maybe they're. I like Isaiah Likely. I think Likely, in my opinion, he's underrated from the Ravens' perspective. He's predominantly more so of a pass catching tight end. So from that perspective, I don't see as much of a downfall necessarily with regards to the production of Mark Andrews versus say Isaiah Likely from the from the receiving standpoint. Like he's got some skill sets there where he isn't, where he's lacking obviously is Mark Andrews' size and blocking skills, and the run more so in the run game. So that's where I see it a little bit more so of, but that could take some time to develop and gel, give the confidence, to go to Likely in those scenarios where Lamar Jackson would more so go to where Lamar Jackson would go to Mark Andrews, right, in those clutch third down moments, which he oftentimes looked at him for. So, yeah, we'll see. I still think they have enough wide receiving corps. I do believe though that Lamar Jackson hasn't. I mean, he hasn't necessarily committed as many mistakes, right? But he hasn't really I think he only has like 13 touchdowns, passing wise, so far this season. Not too much production in terms of scoring. So definitely needs more production there in the red zone, and obviously he's had some miscues there, especially in the fourth quarter, fumbling the ball. But otherwise, he's had like more so of a safer, I guess, game plan for him passing wise. But I want to see them unleash the ball a little bit, but easier said than done against a tough Rams defense here. But I respect your pick. I respect your pick, especially 7-point underdogs. I'm definitely going to be taking the Rams there for that. So, but winning wise, that's hard to say. That's hard to say. I'll stop there. Yeah.
Yeah. My only pushback I would say with Likely is that he's very boomer bust. I mean, I feel like there's weeks where he will absolutely show up. They will concentrate on feeding him. He will stand out in the box scores. There's other weeks where it's like, yeah, it's hard to know where he kind of falls in the pecking order. I just feel like, Andrews is just such a bona fide stud at tight end. He's been a year in, year out Pro Bowler. Like that's just got to be such a confidence blower for that team, even if Likely steps in and can get you 7 to 8 catches, create some sort of offense and things like that. I just feel like he's still early on in his career. I mean, I think he's got, like you're saying, like a lot of talent to build on. Those performances that he had where he kind of jaw dropped and said, like, wow, never really, considered Likely, and like this guy could be something to, to kind of emphasize in the offense. But yeah, man, I don't know. We'll see. Baltimore is it's just such a hard team to predict, man. It's always one that I'm just scratching my head at because I never know when they're ready to take that next step, or if it's just going to be just another year out of Baltimore.
Yeah, or they get hurt, right? Like that's this is usually the time of year, right, where the Ravens, like, the injury bug kind of kicks in. I mean, like you mentioned, they, obviously Andrews, lost for the remainder of the season and everything. So, you know, hopefully they keep healthy, especially on the offensive side. I don't think they can lose any more talent, especially I think on the offensive line. They've recently they just got Moses back, I think, at right tackle. So it's like, they're starting to gear up a little bit, but obviously losing Andrews, that's such a big blow. Almost to the extent of, like, if Mahomes lost Kelsey, like, kind of like that. Like, we saw that they lost to the Lions there first week, and we saw that net effect of just, who am I going to pass it to? And it kind of still is happening, right? But yeah, very much so. I think with Lamar and Andrews, and trying to have that confidence to go to, like, Likely or two other wide receivers in those third downs.
Yeah, we will see. Still waiting for that blow up ODB game. Hasn't quite come. I think Zay Flowers been like I don't know, their key cog this year. In the offense. I mean, over the course of the season, but we'll have to see. This should be an interesting game if it's available wherever you're at. I would tune in because I think this will be kind of interesting to see where the Rams kind of are ranked in the mix of teams that could vie for playoffs, and then also how dominant can the Ravens be to kind of close out the year. I guess with that, we'll move on to our next matchup: the Detroit Lions going on the road to take on our Chicago Bears.
Man, oh man. Look, hey, I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna pick the Bears here. Like, straight up. I think they get the money line. I think they win. They pull off the upset. You know, like, hey, let's remember last game just a couple weeks ago, right? Against the Lions in Detroit. In Detroit, right? And this was Justin Fields' first game back. And, hey, we both, like, have talked how the offensive play calling has been awful for the Bears. But, at least against the Lions, I think they did some good things. Maybe they played conservatively and didn't hold the lead strategically right there in the fourth quarter. That was obviously the biggest thing there, but they were beating the Lions. They were able to move the ball pretty effectively and efficiently. Had that ball control type of offense. Created turnovers against this Lions team as well, which, they've been able to play some pretty clean football. But yeah, I don't know if that's at Soldier Field in Chicago. I'm feeling pretty good here. If I'm a Bears fan, a little bit, would I like to see maybe our draft pick, continue to rise a little bit? Yeah, sure. But at the same time, I think it'd be nice. I think there's a lot of desperation happening right now at House Hall in Chicago, right? There's a lot of reports of Matt Eberflus, like him, like this is his last season basically, and all this talk about Eric Bieniemy maybe or Harbaugh. So, uh, and then also Justin Fields too. So Justin Fields, he still has to ball out, kind of see, like, all right, is this the guy we want to keep, or do we want Caleb Williams? Do we want Marvin Harrison Jr.? I don't know, right? So all that's being happening right now, but when we look at the game that happened previously, I'm kind of hoping a little bit to see some continuity, some improvement based off of the last performance against the Lions again at Detroit, and hopefully they are able to still create turnovers and such. I mean, the Bears defense has been playing really well. Eddie Jackson, maybe not his brightest moment when he kind of gave up that fourth quarter touchdown. It's like a 30-40 yarder. I'm like, come on, man. Like that's like the one thing you're not supposed to do. So I'm gonna pick the Bears. It's a 3-point spread, but yeah, I'm gonna pick them pulling off the upset here against the Lions.
Man, love the confidence. Love it. I feel like you're in your right to pick the Bears because of their matchup in Detroit, how they showed up and went into Minnesota and got a big win, even though it was one of the ugliest football games ever, recorded on live television. But I don't know, man. There's just something about, you know, Detroit and the way that they're set up, the way that they played, even on the road in New Orleans last week. I mean, I feel like, getting Goff's attempts down, he had a really solid game for himself, no turnovers, just playing pitch and catch, emphasizing the run. You've got two of the better, backs there and probably one of the best offensive lines in the game. Just keep the game simple, for yourself. Keep feeding it to Monty and Gibbs. I love the fact that Laporta had a blow up game of his own. He's had a lot of great performances this year to kind of go along with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, they're the number 2 total offense in the game right now, which is, just impressive. Coming out of Detroit, it's kind of crazy to even say that. Um, for the Bears, I mean, the defense has been what I've been most impressed with, and just their progress over the course of the year. I mean, they're moving their way into the top 10 in terms of total D, which is just kind of crazy from where we were even a few weeks ago. So, I mean, the turnovers keep coming. The pressure is now starting to come. It's like I can see, where this team might be, going into next year and just being one of the most stout units in the game, possibly. I mean, that's kind of crazy again to say, but it's like I can see that progression coming, from them as a unit. And, like you're saying, we'll see what happens with coaching, whether it's, Eberflus is still somehow, some way into the mix, or, I would hate to see Bieniemy come over. I mean, nothing against the guys like past experiences. I just don't know if it's like the greatest fit at this point in time for us, like with what he, is probably going to be best, at working with. I'd take him over others that are, completely off the radar, but in the same sense, we'll just kind of have to see. But I
Yeah.
think the thing that the Bears are probably going to struggle with a lot is just putting some offense together. I mean, I feel like, Detroit doesn't necessarily come in with, one of the higher ranked units in the game, but they did apply a lot of pressure in their game against the Saints. I feel like they were getting a lot of QB hits, causing, Carr and Winston to kind of play on their heels, at points in the game and things like that. Um, it's tough for me to say, man. I don't think this is going to be like a very like lopsided type game. I don't see Detroit coming in and, embarrassing the Bears or anything like that. But, you know, they've been playing great football all year. I think people are waiting for them to kind of fall on their faces and things, but I think they are just a really well-rounded team. I think they've probably learned from a couple weeks ago, and knowing not to take them lightly as they go into the Bears' house now. And for the Bears, it's like, yeah, that just that offense is so puzzling to me. Like it's not really an offense like an NFL offense at this point. So I'm just wondering, how they're going to be able to go blow for blow with a team like the Lions.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I definitely agree upon, I guess, hey, this Lions offense, it's remarkable, and I'll definitely talk about, kind of foreshadowing some of my non-quarterback MVPs there a little bit more later on. But yeah, this Lions team is, the line that they have too. I think they'll be able to maybe move the ball. If the Bears are able to stop, Montgomery from picking up those first downs and Gibbs as well, like that'll be, I think, a key thing. I doubt that Goff is going to throw what 3 interceptions or something. So, and commit for 4 turnovers. I doubt that's going to happen. Maybe they get 1 or 2, but still, that's going to be really difficult, I think, to count on for this Bears team. But I don't know. I think that Justin Fields in the offense, hopefully they don't have the offensive game plan that they had against the Vikings. I know this whole idea that the Vikings blitzed a bunch. That's kind of why they did all these screens. But I'm like, you gotta there's other plays that work against the screens, and they actually did some, like that whole Cole Kmet on the 4th and 10, I think it was, like that worked. So anyways, like, yeah, there's got to be much more offensive ingenuity, I think, in this modern day age of, how do I counteract the blitz, right? So um but yeah, I don't know, I am curious, not to go off completely off topic, like, we've talked about the enemy, we've talked about like Ben Johnson, all, like who would be like your head coach ranking, as a Bears fan for the Bears head coaching spot?
Yeah, I mean, Harbaugh for sure is my number one. I just think he comes with so much experience as a head coach, multiple different um, types of teams. I mean, we're talking a bit about college, but we're also looking at San Francisco and his run there. His familiarity and feel for the NFL game, I think, is a lot better than most college coaches, just given his time there, but also his brother just being in the league as well. I just always feel like those two kind of seem to rub off on one another, and I'd love to have like a real bona fide NFL head coach. Like, I think the only thing I worry about is like maybe just some of the just how big of an event that's going to be to have Harbaugh be perhaps the Bears head coach. Like, will it become such a three-ring circus that it, distracts from the actual football and the actual coaching and development that a lot of these kids really need? We've seen like the Lou Piniella hires in Chicago or the Ozzie Guillens and, other things like that. It's just, I hope that doesn't become kind of a distraction. When we were talking a lot last week, looking at guys who could really, help Justin, develop his game. Um, I think again, I'm looking at, I think Ben Johnson, what he's done with the Lions, getting them to being one of the best offenses in the league with the personnel that they have. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is one of the best wide receivers in the game. But then taking a lot of rookies and making them extremely credible in their first years, and getting Monty to look like a Pro Bowl running back, and Jared Goff rediscovering his magic with Detroit. It says a lot, and I think his name's been thrown around so much around the league that it's like I'm really interested in seeing what he could be. I've also thrown out names like Brian Johnson, OC of Philly, just his work with Hurts and his development. So I think that'd be a nice compliment to Justin if and hopefully we're keeping Justin in that situation. And then perhaps a guy like Byron Leftwich, like I just think he's been around the block. He's been a name that's been discussed. I think a lot of folks like want to give him the job, but just don't pull the trigger. And it's like he's a former quarterback in this league. He's worked with a lot of greats over his time, as a coach in this league. So I just think he'd be a good fit. I just think he'd be a wise fit. But that'd probably be my hierarchy of guys. Be enemy credible, in terms of having the right experience to deserving, a head coaching role. Obviously, being an OC, I think he definitely has one of the 32 jobs in this league for as long as he wants. It's just, coming over from Washington, what has he actually demonstrated? I'm glad Sam Howell has shown like some potential, and like he's been on and he's been way off, depending on the week. But, overall, like, do we want to be pulling from the Commanders, coaching tree to solve the issues that we have here? Like, has he demonstrated enough over there to show us that, number one, he's capable of not being tied to Patrick Mahomes, but then also taking that next step and being like a legitimate head coach in this league with all the things that, we need to check off our list as a team. It's like, that seems incredibly risky to me, even given his experience, but that's just where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of feeling that it's like Harbaugh almost or bust for a lot of Bears fans. I think we're more so kind of just desperate to really land that home run, right? You brought up the Ozzie Guillen or the Lupinella, somebody that is kind of just loud in a way, but larger than life, right? But in a way, I feel like that's kind of like what works in Chicago. We said for a coach, for oftentimes. I mean, Lovie Smith was like very mellow and low key, right? But then I think a lot of Bears fans, they kind of want somebody like a Harbaugh just in his personality a little bit from the Bears coaching. Like, Ditka like ruled the town basically, right? So, and he was very much larger than life. And but then Harbaugh, he has a history of winning wherever he goes, whether it be college or the NFL. So I know there's a lot of hope for him, but it just always feels like this kind of happens like every other year with Harbaugh. And, he's already been part of the Bears organization. So he kind of knows in a way of like maybe some of our short fallings a little bit more. Maybe he's more familiar than some other ones, but um, I don't know. It's definitely a we'll see, I think, with regards to Harbaugh. Maybe this is all smoke and mirrors for him just to stay at Michigan. I don't know. It's hard to say exactly. So, but I think my pick, and I've talked about it for sure. Um, you know, uh, I'm probably eyeing at Bobby Slowick a little bit just because of what he's been able to do there with CJ Stroud. Another name, maybe more so on the offensive coordinator, or at least as a quarterbacks coach. I think he's a kind of a free agent coach out there. Is bringing in Pep Hamilton, who's worked with Andrew Luck in college, and I think he was also like his OC coordinator there with the Colts for a little bit. For his rookie season, as well as he's helped develop Justin Herbert as well. And then even Davis Mills, like, nobody thought of him last year when he was with the Texans, but he actually had a pretty decent, like, a year with the Texans there. So, and, he's more so now the backup now that CJ Stroud's there, obviously, but yeah, I think he's definitely a good coach that can develop more so those skill sets that Justin feels I feel like is lacking more so of that. Davis Mills or a player like Davis Mills can has, right? So I don't know. There's just a couple of names there for sure, but there definitely is a sentiment though. Harbaugh has got to be the guy. If he is, great. It's going to satisfy the Bears fans, but if it's not, it's like, all right, I guess we'll have to stick through, another cold winter, losing to the Packers more. But I don't know. Yeah, just some thoughts I think I was kind of thinking about there.
Yeah, I mean, those are other good names too. We absolutely need Alabama to pound Michigan in the CFP because if that happens, that for me, if I was Jim Harbaugh, would
Yeah.
completely kill my dreams of like winning national championships at Michigan. It might be the impetus to like wanting to move to the NFL. But if he
Yeah.
happens to win that first round and they happen to fall in the final or something, he might get hungry to go back and see if he can climb that mountaintop. Or if they happen to win a championship, he might be like, hey, man, it's time to start my own dynasty here at Michigan or something. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, nothing against the Wolverines or anything like that. But if we want Harbaugh to be our coach, like I feel like that'd be one domino that has to fall immediately.
I mean, I don't know if you've been following this whole Florida State thing at all. Like, that's another whole subject about whether I don't know. For me, it's like, yeah, the SEC. Like, let's be real. Let's be real. This isn't some sort of a feel good type of thing of like, okay, great, like Florida. No. Alabama would have rocked them. Alabama would have rocked Florida State. And I've been cheering about Florida State about, oh, like with Jordan Travis there as a quarterback, like I thought that they were going to go for the national championship. But, especially with that defense and the wide receivers, I thought they were actually going to win it all. But yeah, backup quarterback. This isn't the NFL. This isn't the NFL. Yeah, it's not Cardell Jones again. So I don't know. I was actually I was impressed that the college football committee, right, actually were to do that because I think they made the right choice. Like when people actually think about it, but the people definitely want that whole, oh man, they won all the games and they're part of a college, Power Five and all that. But, anyways, yeah, I just wanted to get off my chest.
Yeah.
College football playoff committee, you did it right. You did it right. Everybody else, they're just gonna talk. But this Alabama team, like, come on, let's be real. That Florida State offense, they're basically they're gonna look like an Iowa football offense, right? Or basically how that New England Patriots versus Steelers games gonna look like on Thursday night. They're gonna do nothing against the teams currently right now in the football playoff. Just my opinion. Just my opinion on all that.
Yeah. So we started with Lions, Bears, and now we're talking CFP, Florida State. Now they've been shafted here. I mean, I'm actually, to be honest with you, though, I'm on the complete opposite end of this argument, and I hear okay. So I also think that Alabama and Georgia would most likely, you know, dominate any of those teams that are kind of currently in the CFP. I mean, to be honest with you, I think that they're, of a different ilk, but it's like, I think the problem that I have with it is Texas beat Bama beat Georgia, and there's one team that's just not been defeated. You have, five power conferences in this whole collegiate system, and one goes undefeated from one of those power five, and you're saying that, you don't have a seat at the table. You don't even get an opportunity to possibly get destroyed. I mean, we saw TCU, make their way into the national title game, and they got crushed, but they did happen to win a game on their way there. I just think it's like what obviously we know, like next year we go into, we got 12 teams, we open this whole thing up. It makes a hell of a lot more sense. I mean, it'll make this whole process way easier to contemplate. Like anybody bitching about not being the 12 seed, like save it. But it's like, if you're just going to have four seeds and you're going to try to find the way to make that work, to me, it doesn't make any sense to leave out a team that's undefeated, that won their conference. And I know we could all be upset about the SEC not having a spot, but like maybe this is a year you just don't have the spot because you guys didn't win in the situations that you needed to get yourself cemented there. I'm on the wrong side of this argument because we know what the reality is, but it's like I would just think one of those SEC teams, if that's what you're up against, like one of you guys lost to Texas, so that's going to be a knock against you. Like the team that has to fill that slot has to be undefeated as well, and that just didn't happen. So um, it's a fresh debate, but it deviates away from the Lions Bears for sure.
Yeah. It is interesting how we made this like whole transition there. But like one more point, at least the criteria, and this I'm definitely in favor of blowing up to 12 teams, right? I think at least the criteria that was presented to the committee, and this is the fault of the criteria, is they ought to just say that. Like they ought to just say that. Like that ought to be in the rules more so of you're undefeated, you get the conference championship, boom. You gotta be like that ought to be part of the criteria more so pumping up there. But it's not. You know what is like having quality players or something along those language, right? Having those quality players that we believe can make an impact. That basically the talent level is there, right? And that's definitely where it's like losing that Jordan Travis, albeit the remainder of the team is really good. And people say about like Jordan Travis, he didn't win the Heisman, or he wasn't a Heisman candidate and all that. It's like, yeah, because he got hurt the last couple of games, so therefore that killed his candidacy. Like that's just kind of how it works. And was he a Heisman candidate kind of before? Maybe a little bit, but at the same time, like I don't know, it's definitely an interesting debate or talk or conversation to have, and maybe that's just their whole thing. They just want us to give us one last hurrah, I think, for this whole college football playoff thing.
Yeah. It's just funny to me because I've never seen, teams, players get analyzed based on what their prospective, performance is going to be. I mean, it's kind of like sets its own precedent to me, because if you look at MVPs, you look at, any other accolades you could shower on players, usually you're looking at what happened in the regular season. You're not really counting like their performance in the playoffs, and like those awards don't change as the playoffs move forward and things like that. So I'm kind of like looking at the situation, thinking to myself, like, has there not been another team that's like lost their starting quarterback and had to go to backups to get into the CFP? Like, hasn't Bama been in that situation where they've lost, they've gone from Hurts to Tua to Mac Jones, things like that, or some combination of sorts where, the starter goes down, you got to play your backup to just spell it. But if you're one of the top teams in the whole country, like if you're undefeated, even if you think the conference is not as great as the SEC or whatever else it could be, it's just like, don't you think that team's capable enough of like having another 4 or 5-star recruit to step in and like get a couple of weeks to prepare, whatever it is, and just play to their best, and they still have like a bunch of NFL prospects on the roster? Like, I just think it's just a bunch of shit. Like it's all crazy, man. It's all like, to me, it's this big black curtain, and only a few can really see what's underneath there. And I mean, Richard Sherman threw out the point of like, there's definitely, dollars being passed over to, this actual committee from the SEC and things. Hey, I don't know anything about that. If anything ever was to happen, like, would I be shocked? Like, no, but I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, I kind of see it as like, it's just a strange call to make. And I think it's a harder one to defend than if you were to take it the other way. Like if you had put Florida State in there, I think that'd be an easier way to explain why Alabama's not in versus why Florida State is not.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. But yeah, they ought to just write it in the rules. And hey, glad that it's going to go to 12 teams, I think, next season. So, because yeah, then Georgia would be in play too, and like they're a quality team as well. So they just happen to lose to Alabama this time, right? So yeah,
right. Like, have you also ever seen like a number 1 seed just get completely, like in one very close missed loss has completely been like just like
you
the whole season was
anymore.
nothing because they lost by 3. Yeah. Like, how do you go from 1 to not even being considered? Like, it is just crazy to me. So thank God the system is getting flushed down the toilet. It is terrible. And man, just looking forward to seeing what happens with Harbaugh of Michigan so that we can figure out who the Bears coach will be. Beyond Week 14's matchup between the Bears and Lions.
More importantly, does Harbaugh join the Bears? There we go.
Yeah. And we got to it. Wayne has the Bears winning. I've got the Lions winning reluctantly, and we'll see how it goes. Go Bears. bear down. Final matchup: the Philadelphia Eagles go on the road to take on the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, so I mean, this is definitely going to be interesting. I think right now, Hurts he's been banged up. Like I don't know, he looks hurt out there. No pun intended. Actually, Hurts looks a little hurt. Like he's not been playing the best of late. He's got against has gone against some pretty good teams. I think of late as well. It's just he has not played at that MVP caliber that he was right. Kind of the 10 weeks into the season here. So, but Prescott and the Cowboys they've been playing exceptionally well. Prescott is now like moving up into the MVP talks a little bit more so of Cowboys. They're also undefeated at home. This game being in Dallas, and I think I've mentioned that before. Like they just look like tremendous. They scored 40 points, just like you can staple it right there, especially even against this Eagles team. But even again, like this Eagles team, especially against that talented 49ers team, they looked very, very vulnerable there. They're giving up points. So, and I think, yeah, against Dallas at home, against this really high powered offense that they just seem to have this magic in Dallas. Like, there's I think to the point that David Carr, right? Like we can talk about him as an analyst. He's been saying like, yeah, Eagles, maybe you ought to start Mariota. Like, I mean, stupid stuff like that,
No way,
obviously.
dude.
Yeah, no way. Like the quarterback that got sent like 70 times or something like that, and rookie season. Come on, like what takes do you got to say? Anyway, um, yeah, the Eagles. This is tough. 3.5 favorites. In favor of the Cowboys actually here. I think the Cowboys. Like, there's a lot of things that think in favor of the Cowboys. There's the momentum, the way that they've been playing. Like, played a pretty close game there against the Seahawks, and at home, like just the way that they play at home, and then the Eagles, the way that they've been playing at the moment. I'm gonna go actually with the Cowboys here. I know it's a little bit weird, right, to kind of say out loud, and part of me is like, "What the hell am I thinking?" But at the same time, just the way that the Cowboys have been playing, I have a lot more confidence with them right now. And hey, even a blind squirrel finds a nut. So I feel like Dak Prescott, maybe he can break away from losing some of these big games here. But yeah, I got the Cowboys, and I think that they'll cover actually that 3.5 point spread there.
Yeah, I agree. They're besting the
Oh,
Eagles in pretty much all important categories here: offense, defense, takeaways. I mean, they're significantly better than the Eagles in all those components of the game right now. Like you're saying, Eagles are sputtering. They've played some really close ones up until last week's blowout loss to the Niners. I mean, they gave up 456 yards of offense to the 49ers. I mean, I love what the Niners have right now, and I love the way they're playing football. They look like the Super
mm-hmm.
Bowl favorites, in my opinion, to this point. But in the same sense, as far as the Eagles go, it's just been like that defense is just continually falling off from the start of this year. We actually like thought they looked dangerous, and we were all talking about that front four and how deep they are. You got linebacker, the secondary is stacked with all these stars and things like that. It's just like that team quit, man. I was watching that game last week, and it was just big play after big play, missed tackles, guys not running up and making those hits, no gang tackles whatsoever. Everybody was basically going out there solo. I mean, I saw Blankenship, who was like their last resort out there. I mean, he was like basically on his knees, like just kind of like waffling at guys running by him, whether it was Samuel or McCaffrey, whoever. So I don't know, man. They look a little bit lost right now. It doesn't help that they got to go into Dallas, especially after that hard fought victory they got in Philly against Dallas, where it was basically a game of inches. I mean, it came down to a game of inches, and Dallas is absolutely thinking about that, and they're just playing with an all time high in confidence. Like for me, crazy to say, would never say it. Like, but Dak has been the MVP this year, in my opinion. Like as a quarterback, as far as his counting stats go, as far as his team's performance goes, like he is working with one of the better defenses in the league. He's got some great weapons, but he's also made them, very, very like he's done everything that's been asked of him this year and more. Do I think Dak's ultimately like a top 10 talent, even at the quarterback position? Like it's debatable. Like I don't think so. Check back in with me next year. But like to this point, you have to look at him as the MVP in a lot of different ways. And CD is right there as well, just in terms of his production over the course of the year. And now they're getting Ferguson involved more often. Cooks, like Pollard is playing more to his standards of what we thought he would be coming into this year. Deron Bland again as another pick. Like he's just kind of a blanket out there in coverage, and Parsons gets to the quarterback better than anybody I've seen in this game. So, yeah, man, at home only 3.5. If I was placing bets, I'd go way over. I think this is like, I don't know, man. It could be a 10 point or above type victory for them. But if I was, having a sports app, type account for, DraftKings or whatever else, I would be going way over on Dallas, with the win, with, covering the spread. And I would be sharing it all around the Sharps app to make sure all my friends knew exactly what I was doing.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, nice plug in there for sure. But no, I agree. Like if you put Dak Prescott's like stats in there, like right next to like Brock Purdy's, it pretty much stacks up like basically the same, or if not better. Like he has more touchdowns. About the same yardage. I think Purdy just has a better QB rating, but that's about it, right? Like basically the same kind of stats. And I mean, both offenses are stacked in general, but Prescott, like there was that. Maybe my argument would be like, hey, look, Purdy, when he lost Debo Samuel and Trent Williams, like he looked very amateur out there. And then, oh, now they're back. Okay, now let's throw up 30 points and go back to my normal ways, right? It's like I don't know, Prescott, like he'll have some injuries here and there, but he still kind of plays consistently on that level, and he doesn't have. I mean, Pollard's solid, especially in the fantasy. I think he's top 10, right? But then he's not McCaffrey, right? So I feel like he's got a little less weapons than Purdy. Yet he's having similar, productions basically on every single stat line. So yeah, like I would definitely. I mean, I at least this season, right? I think Prescott has had an impeccable season, even compared to like Brock Purdy. So I would basically defend your point of, hey, I think he is actually the MVP over Brock Purdy so far this season. Still got a couple games to go, but yeah, like I don't know. That's my argument is that Brock Purdy, when he doesn't have all the weapons there, he looks very normal. And Prescott, he's had some injuries here and there on his team too, but he's definitely kept at that production, to at a higher level. So I agree on that. And yeah, I think this game will be kind of done by the third quarter if we're kind of both predicting what we're predicting here. So
Yeah. I mean, if I was to offer you a trade, if I was Dallas and I said, I want to trade all of my offensive weapons to you, San Francisco, for yours, I mean, what would your answer be?
if I trade all of Dallas's offensive weapons to, was it the Niners you
To
said?
Yeah, I'm offering you all of my offensive weapons from
Oh,
Dallas, and I want
no,
all.
no, yeah. I'll be like, are you
It,
kidding me? Like, are you, yeah, drunk or whatever? Like, yeah,
exactly, and I think that's the point of like when you
yeah,
look at Dak's season, it's like think about that because I mean, no disrespect to Purdy or anything like that, but like I mean, Dak, I mean his mark on his team this year, like seriously, like I'm really, and we've thought about this. We are thinking about this. We'll move into this topic after this game, but it's like
sure. Mm-hmm.
you think about MVP candidates, like he's really taking the bull by the horns this year.
Yeah, no, and I 100% agree. Again, look at the stat line. Like, it's very close with regards to everything. But yeah, if you look at the whole body makeup, like apart from the stat line, I'm going to pick Dak Prescott's, his performance overall, just 9 out of 10 times versus what Brock Purdy's been able to do with the talent level he's had too. So yeah.
Well, I mean, that's both of us really championing, an MVP season here for Dak. We'll get back to you when they get the first round exit, but for right now, Dak Prescott, you're getting your flowers here in Week 14. We'll see how this game goes, but I guess while we're staying on MVPs, this was a topic that we threw around. Really, really like looking forward to this too. Just talking about MVP candidates, and I'd first like to say that like looking at this season, I think this is the first season in a very long time where you can actually look at players across the league and just take out the quarterback. I mean, I think there hasn't been, too many quarterbacks where we could clearly say like that's been the best player, has had the most impact on his team to win games this season. I think, defenses for some of the best teams in this league have really stepped up. A lot of their weapons obviously have been complete game breakers, like getting, all sorts of, stats and scores like on the board and things like that. So I guess with that, Wayne and I are just going to go back and forth. We're going to have a top five, seeing where we kind of rank them. But honestly, it's going to be kind of labeled as non-quarterback MVP candidates. But for me as well, these are legitimate MVP candidates, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I 100%. Yeah, we're definitely gonna go back and forth on this, and it's gonna be fun because, like you mentioned, like who would have thought, like, oh, Dak Prescott's the MVP of the season, right? There just hasn't been that whole like Patrick Mahomes like scheduled to get like 50 touchdowns type of season right now, and just kind of way that that things have been kind of unfolding so far. So definitely looking forward to, I guess, talking about the non-quarterbacks, giving them some love there, you know.
For sure. So I guess let's start with you, your number five non-quarterback MVP candidate.
Yeah, number five. Do you want to throw out some honorable mentions here, real quick? I
Sure,
do have.
sure.
Yeah, I want to get. Yeah, real quick, real quick. Want to give some props to AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and my fringe pick here, Deron Bland. I kind of edged another person in front of you for this. So, but number five, not to go off tangent again here. I got Penei Sewell. I got Penei Sewell actually. I'm picking offensive tackle, right? As an MVP. I think if you ask any like Detroit Lions fan, right, who is the best player on our offense, right? Like a true Detroit Lions fan, who are they gonna say? Are they gonna say like it's just in terms of sheer talent and even maybe where they rank at the position, right? Like Penei Sewell, he's playing the best. He's the best tackle right now in football. At least I think according to PFF. He allowed his first sack of the season this past week against the Saints. He hasn't before that he hadn't allowed a sack since looks like week 10 of 2022. So and his run blocking has been tremendous too. Like he's been the guy that it's like, hey, third and short or something. Hey, let's maybe go to the tackle side, or third and three. Let's go towards the Penei Sewell side. Let's run Montgomery, get those short yardage, right? Like he's been that kind of guy, and then obviously protecting Jared Goff. Like Jared Goff isn't some sort of mobile quarterback that runs around and scramble and create more time in the pocket. That's certainly where Penei Sewell has been that staple hold is in pass protection. Has been one of the top ranked offensive linemen in pass protection too. And it's interesting now this whole thing about blindside versus right tackle, right? Like, oh, the left tackle ought to be more valuable. Like in the modern day NFL, that's become less of a thing just because both edge rushers can annihilate the quarterback these days. So and can affect the quarterback just as much. If a quarterback sees pressure versus maybe not sees a pressure, right? Maybe they do a move or something like that gets them to throw the ball a little bit quicker, right? Things like that happen more so in the left tackle versus right tackle type of conundrum there. Anyway, I love Penei Sewell. I think he ought to get some props or some votes or something for MVP. That's my case for the 5 spot here for non-offensive MVP of the season.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's never. I mean, these guys never get recognized for the talents that they are. It sucks. I mean, I wish there were more identifiable stats or recordings of those, marketing of those that tackles, guards, centers are able to compile over the course of the year. Like I think the pancake is one thing that they look at. I mean, obviously, like if you can decrease pressure or QB hits, sacks, whatever it is, pass deflections, like that should all be counted, recorded. I'm sure there are sites like PFF or other like super nerdy football stat sites that probably do look at this stuff. But no, I think your argument's awesome. I mean, Detroit, again, like number 2 offense in the game. You look at some of the weapons on there. It's like, as we were talking about it for the Bears, Lions matchup, it's like, yeah, when you really think about it, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown is like a top talent at wide receiver. But then you really start to look around, you're like, Gibbs and Laporta are in year one. Monty was a retread from the Bears. They're making something out of Jameson Williams now. It's just super interesting. Khalif Raymond's been great, but like, how did they become great? And it's like because Goff has found a way to rejuvenate himself to have time to be able to, kind of get it out to these folks. And obviously with the running backs, like they need those holes to exploit to make their game stand out. So it's like who's creating all that time and who's creating all that space, and it's like it's guys like Penei Sewell, and he's obviously at the top of his game. He's probably revered as the top tackle in football. So yeah, man, I love it. Sign me up. I'd give him votes for sure. Like he'd have votes, going on the board for MVP if I was a writer.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. Who is your number 5 for non-offensive MVP or a non-QB MVP?
Yeah, for me, it's T.J. Watt. I was thinking in a similar vein in terms of let's look at guys who really disrupt the game in ways where they're not touching the ball always. And TJ Watt for me has been one of those guys in the game for a long time. Right now he's ranked second in the league with 14 sacks. His tackle totals have been increasing year over year to where, he's really kind of standing out as like a hybrid linebacker edge type player for them. I mean, huge disruptor. I mean, causing a handful of fumbles over the course of the year. He's had a few recoveries. He had a big interception that led to a touchdown this year. But I think about who the Steelers are and how they're able to compete at the level that they do with the talent that we kind of scoff at. I mean, it's kind of a big joke. I mean, Kenny Pickett and a thinned out receiving core, guys that we're like looking at as taking those next steps, but really haven't so far. I mean, Najee is kind of like clowned on as being like a super bust, and like Jalen Warren's obviously, maybe the more special of the two backs and things, but it just feels like a team that's really, not super established when you look at, everything that they really encompass. But in the same sense, like they're 7-5, they're fighting for a playoff spot. Tomlin, definitely gets his flowers when it comes to being one of the top coaches in the game, but we've seen obviously TJ, grab Defensive Player of the Year award, in the past, but in the same sense, like if I was thinking about guys that, really are the most valuable for their franchise, like the Steelers without TJ Watt, that may be the one thing that could take them, completely down.
I mean, I have him as my number 4. Not too good. Maybe moving
Awesome.
ahead away. Yeah, maybe moving ahead away. I mean, just kind of worked like that, huh? So yeah, he was my number 4. Mike. I mean, yeah, like you said, they're 7-5. This team has no business being 7-5. Uh, I think the point differential is nuts. I think it's like 30 points. 30 points. Like the defense has given up 30 points more than the offense has produced or whatever. Like this is crazy what's happening over there in Pittsburgh. And it is players like TJ Watt. Like if you take TJ Watt out of there, like the defense is still pretty good, like with Highsmith and Minka Fitzpatrick and all that. But like to this point where that they're able to win games basically because of the defense, that's all on TJ Watt. Like Mike Tomlin said, best defensive player on the planet. I know there's been a lot of talks I think with Myles Garrett and such, and definitely don't want to discredit him too much and like Nick Bosa, but in my opinion, like at least this season, I think TJ Watt is having the best season out of all those players there. The fumble recovery, TD, interception, everything he's been able to do that in a very competitive division, albeit, and then having absolutely the third worst offense in scoring in the NFL too. Yeah, he's definitely, in my opinion, he might be up for I think defensive player or defensive MVP. I think he would probably be my pick. Maybe him or Deron Bland, right? So definitely love me some TJ Watt for sure.
Sounds good. Who's your number 4?
Oh, he
Well,
was my number 4. Yeah, yeah,
do
yeah. So who? I
you
should
want me
ask
to
you
go
who's.
back?
Yeah, yeah. Go. Who is your number
Yeah.
4? Yeah, yeah.
So pivoting it away, we're going to go with my number 4 is going to be CD Lamb. Obviously, of the Cowboys, we just talked about Dak Prescott. For me, for most of the first half of this year, when we didn't think Dak was in the running for MVP, the only guy putting up credible numbers out of Dallas was CD Lamb. They were looking for options, beyond him. Guys like Ferguson were kind of, hit or miss week to week. Cooks was a complete non-factor. Pollard was not at all, living up to the standards or hype that it was placed on him at the beginning of the year. And I think Dak was steady, but his name wasn't really being, catapulted toward, maybe the top of all quarterbacks in the NFL at that point in time. So I just think about the guys that really, carried the load over the course of this season for Dallas. Obviously, their defense is incredible. There's a couple guys there I definitely think you could put in this category of, non-quarterback MVPs with Bland and Parsons, but at least offensively, I mean, 90 receptions through week 13, 1,100 plus yards. He's got 7 touchdowns. I mean, you kind of project that forward. The very least, I could see him getting 130 receptions, maybe 1,500 plus yards. I mean, that is a disgusting season. And I think he could definitely get there. I mean, just the way they've been kind of playing and putting up their numbers, he could. And do I think he'll actually get actual MVP consideration? Like, I don't know, man. I think there's some guys above him, but he's definitely been, taking his game to the most elite level at this point. And I think folks are going to start putting him in the conversation for best wide receiver in the game at some point very soon.
My number 3 is CD Lamb, actually. So I'll jump right into it. Basically, I love me some CD Lamb, and like you were saying, I don't think he gets the credit that maybe the Jamar Chases of the world or the Justin Jeffersons of the world get, or AJ Brown, or et cetera, et cetera. Again, not to discredit them, but I think he belongs in that picture. We saw what he did last season, right? He got like 100 receptions or something like that, I think, last season, a bunch of yards, et cetera, et cetera. But I think he's having a better season this season. Cowboys in general are, and like you were mentioning, like, Pollard hasn't had the best season. I think his yards per carry is like under 4, if I'm not mistaken. So hasn't really had that level of production that I think maybe some of us expected him to. But CeeDee Lamb, he's definitely held his and the bargain. They lost Schultz in the offseason, and they didn't really add too many other weapons, I think, to that arsenal. They're passing the ball more to Ferguson, but it's only really been of late that Prescott's developed more of a kind of a chemistry with Ferguson and at the tight end position. And player like Gallup and then Brandon Cooks, he's Prescott's looking more to, at least of recent, but early on the season, yeah, it was very much on CD Lamb kind of carrying the offense, really. So definitely want to give some props towards CeeDee Lamb, what he's been able to do, think there. And yeah, I don't know, just great player overall. And I don't know, he even has a rushing touchdown as well. So he's been used on the running game a little bit. I think he has like 60 some odd yards as well. So has had an impact on multiple fronts, I think, for the Cowboys, who they're definitely clicking, right now. And a lot of that, obviously, yeah, is to, I guess, their MVP candidate there with Prescott. But then a lot of it, in my opinion, too, is also CeeDee Lamb, the way he's been producing as well.
For sure. Well, given that was your number 3, you're probably curious who mine is, given that I'm sure we have the same top 2 at this point. But yeah, I mean, this may come as a surprise to many folks, but this guy, by name, cachet alone, is probably not going to be looked at as an MVP. But in the same sense, like, his numbers speak volumes, and for what he's done for his franchise, I think you've got to give him, the respect that he deserves at this point. So with number 3, I went with Raheem the Dream Mostert from Miami. Probably a bit controversial. I know it doesn't roll off the tongue like very well for most folks, but he's got the second most touchdowns in the league for any positional player at this point, just one shy of Christian McCaffrey. He's carried the load for Miami, to be honest with you, throughout this entire year on the ground. I mean, they came into this year with what they thought was going to be a 3-headed monster. Jeff Wilson starts off the year on the IR, has ultimately become a non-factor for Miami, even when healthy now. And Devon Achane was the thing that everybody was running to their waiver wire to go pick up and grab. And obviously had that amazing, game against the Broncos when they won 70-20. But what's kind of unknown is even in that same game, Mostert, went over 100 with a couple touchdowns of his own. So it was like he, was a non-factor or was completely outshadowed in that case. And it's kind of crazy because, you look at the entire year and I think everybody would want to talk about Achan and who he is and what he's going to be. But most years it's just been super steady. As at this point, he's, on his way to probably 1,000 yards rushing, whether it's, maybe this week or the one, after that. We talked about he's got 16 touchdowns on the year and he's also had a lot of receiving work as well. Not to the extent of one of my guys in the top two, but in the same sense, I feel like, Miami being 9-3, predicating a lot of their, prowess on the offensive end. There's another very special player on that team too. And, we'll probably be talking about him very shortly here, but in the same sense, like, I just think he needs to get a lot of attention and respect this year. I mean, I think he's a no doubt Pro Bowler. Whatever else they may be able to shower on him would be great. Cause I think, he's just been a rock for them from the start of the season to right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely looked at that for sure. It's always that argument, I think, with running backs, right? If Asian didn't have that like amazing performance, like maybe actually Mostert would get more of the love for MVP talks or Offensive Player of the Year talks. But yeah, he's definitely not getting the love that I think he deserves. We can definitely talk about like positional value, being part of Mike McDaniel's scheme, but in the end, you got to produce, and he's producing, for the Dolphins there. So I definitely respect that pick for sure, and he definitely needs to get more attention. And he definitely has been doing well from the fantasy perspective, at least. So definitely got to give some props to it, whoever drafted him in any leagues there. So yeah,
yeah. Promise there's no conflict of interest here. He is on my fantasy team, but in the same sense, I really do feel like he's had, a really great year. But
yeah.
in any case, we'll move on to number 2. Wayne, who is that for you?
It'll be interesting to see if we got the same number 1 and number 2 here, but number 2 for me at least, I got CMC. Christian McCaffrey, leads the league in rushing, top fantasy running back, leads the league in touchdowns as well. And the great part, right, for his team, he's been healthy, right? So definitely want to give some props for that. For this team, for this 49ers team that's lost, Deebo Samuels and Trent Williams for some time, like he was the staple there, and he's done it both running the ball and he's done it really effectively, like I mentioned before, leading the league in rushing, and he's also is able to catch out of the backfield, get touchdowns that way, and create havoc for defenses. So gotta show some love for Christian McCaffrey, what he's been able to do this season, being healthy. Christian McCaffrey is so deadly, and yeah, this 49ers team is very much fortunate to have a player like him right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's my number 1. So I feel really strongly about that. I don't think there's a player in this game that can do more on a football field that's not a quarterback. I mean, his work in the receiving game, it almost mirrors like your wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 on, most good teams at this point. But then he's just a complete running back as well. I mean, he can run between the tackles. He's got power, speed. He's got incredible quickness and just like agility, kind of shaking off defenders and stuff like that. He's a great run blocker. It's like, I don't know, man. He's just got a nose for the ball. He's got a feel for the game. I mean, obviously with his dad, being a former pro, it just feels like the day that he walked into, an NFL locker room, he was just ready to be a star. And he's just not disappointed from the time he left Stanford to, now where he's at with San Fran. I think it was hard. I mean, I looked at the top 2. I know who your number 1's probably going to be at this point. He's my number 2, but it's hard because I think both teams, there's a lot of stars on the rosters, and you're kind of like trying to figure out like who really stands apart from being like the most valuable player on their team. But I mean, with San Fran, man, if they didn't have CMC there, I feel like this is a completely different team. I think you take them down a couple of pegs, at least on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't think Purdy, is able to kind of, establish his game in the same way without having somebody who's just a complete nightmare for defenses behind him. And it's just, he commands so much attention that I think, Purdy is able to establish some really great stat lines. Not that he's not deserved the credit that he's, you know, getting at this point, but in the same sense, I feel like his game would definitely take a huge knock without Run CMC.
Yeah, I mean, it is always that replacement, or what would happen if that player was replaced, with kind of an average player in that position to see. And Christian McCaffrey these days is very much unique in that he's just as good of a runner as he is a receiver, right? And especially for the fantasy leagues out there, that's awesome. So, yeah, I definitely want to give him some props and some flowers there. Like he's definitely held his own there. Um, but then number one, and I think it was number two, and this is the fun part, right? Like, we can definitely talk more about who is worth more to their team in a way, right? But yeah, Tyreek Hill, like he's on. I mean, that's the thing. He's on track to break Calvin Johnson's record for receiving yards. He may be able to do it in 16 games. Make it a little bit more legitimate to all the naysayers out there. So we'll see upon that. But number one, I think just in general, in terms of like total points for most fantasy leagues out there, especially the PPRs. 8 out of the 12 games, he's gotten 100 plus yards. We can definitely talk about his impact on that Miami Dolphins offense. Like how many secondaries are just like, we're going to play back, and how does that open up run lanes, the running game? Like maybe that's where I'm thinking about his impact from an MVP standpoint, especially in, today's modern NFL where it's more so now these days, like let's play the pass first and then the run. So I just see he has a high level impact, is able to, the Dolphins are able to have a more effective running game basically because of him. And then, yeah, we can talk about Tua too as like being an MVP candidate from the QB side, essentially because of him. And like let's be honest, if it wasn't for Tyreek Hill, like I don't know, is Tua gonna have the numbers he is having? It's hard to say exactly. So, but yeah, I just gotta give a lot of respect to Tyreek Hill, to the impact he's having, to the season he's having. It's going to be historical, in my opinion, I think. And yeah, we'll see what happens, I think, with regards to Offensive Player of the Year. But for me, I definitely got to pick Tyreek Hill as my non QB MVP.
Yeah, I mean, I think the differentiator for me was total touchdowns. I feel like, McCaffrey having that by a pretty, sizable margin at this point was the one differentiator. I mean, you look at their all purpose yards, they're pretty comparable at this point. I mean, you give the nod to Tyreek Hill on total catches in that sense versus, McCaffrey on the ground and things like that. But no, you're right. I mean, he creates probably so much space for the other guys just to be able to operate in things where you're probably right. Like that plays a huge part in how Miami runs the ball. It obviously has, made Tua a lot more successful. But the thing that's awesome about Tyreek is like I think a lot of folks looked at him after leaving KC and thought, this is just another case of a wide receiver, who was tied to a Hall of Fame quarterback that's now going to move to a more pedestrian franchise and try to do his own thing and make his own money, but he's going to fall flat. And it's like, it's been the exact opposite. It's been the best thing, Tyreek probably could have done for, his own name, his own value, his own standing in this league, especially when we were talking about, best receivers of all time. I mean, it's so funny because he comes in his own like, shape and size. Like we don't necessarily talk about the best wide receivers being someone of his, stature and things like that. But, when Wes Welker came out the other week and talked about, Tyreek Hill versus Randy Moss, he says that Tyreek Hill's the most complete wide receiver he's ever, been around. He's able to run a complete route tree. He said there's nothing that this kid, can't do. And, Randy was more of like your deep ball threat, obviously had the size and things like that. But I mean, just talking about what kind of athlete this kid is, and obviously he's blazing fast, and I mean he's an absolute nightmare out there too. That's why when I was looking at both, it was like just very hard for me to make a decision because these are the two best players in football. Non-defensive, players in that sense, but I really think, I mean, this is more of a public service announcement for the NFL or the writers, whatever it is, that like I think this year's MVP should be one of these two guys because honestly, following this year, I don't think we'll ever see any of the MVP candidates that will be quarterbacks this year be involved in that discussion. I think a lot of the great quarterbacks that are in the game right now are having off years. And this is one of those years where I think you got to really take a critical look and think about who's had the most impact on the game itself. And it's one of these two guys for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree on that. If it wasn't, a Dak Prescott or yeah, I think there's definitely this whole idea of like basically the MVP is the best quarterback, and it's like that really ought not to be the case. Uh, maybe not to the kicker standpoint. I was looking at this whole MVP thing as non quarterback MVPs that you brought up, and believe it or not, there was a kicker that won it like in 1982. Actually, I'm like, what?
Wow.
Yeah, a kicker has won the non has won an MVP before. I think it was like a strike-ridden season, so it was a little bit shorter. Made all his field goals, which is great, I guess, during that time. Like now these days, like you have a kicker every so often, like maybe one or two a year. They're like almost perfect or near perfect now, but I guess in '82 it was more so unheard of. So like,
Is that like Ray Finkel of the Dolphins?
yeah, yeah. Seams in, is it, or is it out? Yeah.
Faces out.
Laces out. Laces out. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like it does got to make you think, right? Like there's got to be more value. Like why does it have to have why does it a wide receiver or a running back basically has these days now has to have like a historical season in order to get those votes for MVP. And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of stupid. And then yeah, we were talking about the defensive side of the ball too. I think two defensive players have actually won MVP as well. I forget the other one, but the last one I believe that won it was Lawrence Taylor, which is like great, the best defensive player basically of all time, right? And yeah, there's that. It just kind of goes to show, like, there's more to, I guess, the football and football winning than just the quarterback, right? Like, there's just got to be more. Maybe not the kicker or punter, but I don't know. Yeah, like let's talk about the T.J. Watts. Let's get him more flowers. Let's talk about the Tyreeks and Christian McCaffrey because, yeah, lo and behold, like I think in any other sport, right, basketball or baseball, like any position can basically win MVP. But then for football, it's almost exclusively the quarterback, and I think that's stupid. Like I honestly do. So I don't know. I think that's where there needs to be more thought put around how the NFL kind of navigates or goes about this. But it's pretty ridiculous how that just always is the case, right?
For sure. I mean, it's comparable to, maybe this year being where a pitcher wins the MVP, in that sense. It's like, let's really dive into that because there weren't enough candidates around the year where, Verlander did it last, where it was like, oh, this actually makes sense. Like Verlander was, the most dominant player of all in this year for our league. So let's hope they get there. If anything, this reel could be one of many out in the universe that, help push them over the hump there. Hopefully they're starting to think about something like that. But yeah, this is our recap, week 14. Hope you guys all enjoyed. Send us a comment. What do you think? Who's your MVP? Who's your non-quarterback MVP? Who did we miss? Are there any other guys that we should have had in our honorable mention section here as well? Subscribe wherever you're at. Reviews are always great. We like comments. Likes are awesome too. So keep those coming. I guess with that, we will move into final thoughts. And Wayne, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, man. Final thoughts. I was looking at like lumpia, right, and egg rolls, and I guess I've had a good variety of different egg rolls, whether it be Vietnamese or obviously Filipino with lumpia and such, Chinese ones as well. Like, curious, Pat, like, what is your favorite, I guess, egg roll type of dish? Is there anything a little bit different that maybe you've tried? Just kind of curious what your perspective on the whole egg roll world, and do you got a favorite?
Yeah, man. I mean, my egg roll game is not super deep or extensive in any sort of way. I feel like for me, egg roll kind of falls in the same camp as sushi for me. Like I wouldn't choose it to be an entree in a lot of ways, but I do like when it's served as an appetizer and kind of like leads up to really good Asian meal. I feel like it can cut across a lot of different ethnicities in that sense. But yeah, man. I mean, I think a traditional like chicken or vegetarian is always good. For me, I like them. I like some of them deep fried, but I also like just the rolls that are steamed and things like that too. I think they're very versatile in their own sense in that way. I guess if I was to do anything off the wall, I would say, any of the American spins on egg rolls to me are also pretty decent. I like the Philly cheesesteak style egg rolls that I've seen here and there at sports bars. And then I like Tex-Mex egg rolls too. I mean, like you can't overlook it. I always think like it's such a good option to go for if like you're just, whatever you're getting, pizza or something else, and it's just kind of like the first thing that comes out. I always feel like that steals
Hmm.
the show in a lot of ways. But yeah, man. I mean, what's not to like about it? I mean, it's got a good crunch, usually filled with veggies and things like that, and kind of helps to kind of get your meal started in a lot of ways. So yeah, man. I'd be interested in just learning more about your takes on egg rolls too. Like, what am I missing, or what are some things that I don't know you look for in a good egg roll?
Yeah, I mean, for me at least, I definitely prefer the crunch, right? There definitely is a place and moment, I think, with regards to, the Vietnamese style, which is much more, I guess, that like, transparent type of roll and everything. But for me at least, I definitely got to go the crunch. I think that maybe the second like most important thing though I think is like the dipping sauce, and how does that kind of combine with whatever protein or vegetables is happening in the egg roll. But like you were mentioning though, it definitely is, at least in my opinion, either like a light meal. It's like, okay, maybe I had like a big lunch or something, maybe this is like my you know little light dinner to kind of simmer down a little bit, but maybe I don't want to feel like I just want to eat a salad or a soup or something. So I think that's where I place the egg roll. A nice light meal placement that gets a little bit of indulgence, but maybe not too much. And sometimes I even take my egg rolls actually. Like they oftentimes just put it as an add-in, maybe like a takeout order or something. And sometimes I honestly just save that and yeah, have that as like a snack or something, or yeah, like a light meal and combined with, I don't know, like some sort of seltzer water, kind of, again, if I had a big lunch, right? So I don't know. Just want to give a shout out to egg rolls. Lumpia will always be my favorite for sure. Nice, sweet and sour sauce, I think, to dip it in. Like it's to die for me. But yeah, gotta love good old egg rolls.
And one last question: what distinguishes lumpia from any other type of egg roll?
Yeah, it's more so because it's like a fried on the outside, and then it's traditionally, yeah, with like a pork in the inside as well.
Mm.
So I think that's kind of like what makes it. It's like lumpia Shanghai, I think, is what it's traditionally called or formerly known as. So yeah, it's more so kind of like that fried egg roll that you usually see. But yeah, whenever I would give it out to my classmates in high school and everything, like they would always love it. Like, what is this? And yeah, it was always a staple, I think, in most potlucks.
Cool, man. Well, we're gonna stay on rolls because I had an awesome weekend snack that I put together for some friends while we were watching football. Had their kids over and things like that. But man, I actually saw this out on IG. There was a lot of different bakers that were just doing this crazy hybrid thing that I thought was the best marriage of two of my favorite sweets of all time: the cinnamon roll and the chocolate chip cookie. Man, this thing was not that hard to make. It was easier than I ever imagined, and I just had never thought about it in my entire 36 years here being on this planet. So I tried it out this weekend, gave it a test run. It did not disappoint. It was like one of the low key best desserts I've ever thrown together in the course of 25 minutes. But essentially, super easy. Went to the grocery store, grabbed a can of cinnamon rolls, Pillsbury, just like the very, very big rolls that you can buy in one can. Paired that with some cookie dough. I think I got some Mrs. Fields chocolate chip cookies that come in a like a 12 count, small block cookie dough pieces that you would normally just put on a baking sheet and just fire away in the oven for 15 minutes or whatever. But essentially, just took those cookies out. I started cutting them in halves at a given point and kind of chopped the cinnamon rolls up into 5 different chunks how they were kind of cut out in the can as it was, and started to unravel the cinnamon roll a little bit. So there was like obviously the dough and the cinnamon was inside on the top and things, but started to take pieces of that cookie and just start to roll, these small little cinnamon roll cookie things, and started cutting them as I went across and started placing them on my own pan. Basically just figured out like the oven cook time and the overall timing. Had a friend over, so she was helping out, just kind of monitor it and coach me through it because it was a very important snack that I want to throw out there. So I wanted to make sure it was perfectly cooked. But 25 minutes was all it really took. These rolls started to expand the outside, and the cookie on the inside just kind of like started to melt on itself. Like it wasn't even. I don't know how to put this. Like the cookie wasn't even fully formed. It was just a bunch of like cookie dough, chocolate chip ooze in the center, which made it even better, to be honest with you. And then to kind of top it all off, I had the icing on the side and just like, warm that up and just started like coating everything right across, and then just threw them out there. And there's probably like 20 small cinnamon rolls that were, packed in the center with a chocolate chip cookie. Man, it was crack. I honestly like, I only had 3 because I was just trying to stop myself. I was like, all right, I'm not gonna like end my night here and just be, feeling disgusted after all this is all over with. But we'll definitely fire those back out. Would definitely recommend to anybody who wants to give it a shot. Like, just go ahead, like, do some science experiment. It will work. It is. They don't have to look pretty either. Like, just give it a go. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, man, I was just trying to like number one convey all that, but in the same sense, like I might take recommendations on cookie pairings in the future because I feel like all you got to do is just grab whatever kind of cookie you want, put in the center. But like, what do you think of all that? Number one, and also if you have any recommendations on what other combos might work with the cinnamon roll, like I'm open ears.
I mean, people are combining cookies or donuts with anything, right? So it's like anything with dough that can go together. Like, there's definitely a lot of varieties there. So I don't know, is there like a cookie donut? Is that a thing? I just said that, but that does sound that could be interesting, right? But yeah, like that. No, that sounds wonderful. Because I remember you sent the picture of me the other day, and I was like, oh wait, what is it? Oh, this looks nice. Like, I normally get like other weird pictures on my phone that people send me, but this is actually really nice. So, uh, no, it looked lovely. It sounds delicious too. Um, yeah, I don't know what other types of things. Maybe I mean, like if they're doing like cronuts and stuff like that, but like I don't know if there's like a croissant. Is that a thing? I'm trying to think of. I'm trying to like see like what are all the fun trends out there. But I
Yeah.
imagine yeah, like a chocolate chip. I think it was what you had, right? With some cinnamon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How might you switch up the cookie? Like if you could just buy, what other types of cookies do you think would go well with this?
I mean, I'm a fan of like the white macadamia, so I don't know how that would pair
Ooh.
up. Yeah, if you're a fan of the white
Oh damn, no,
macadamia,
that
maybe you mix it
good.
up with the cinnamon.
Oh shit. Okay. No. Because I like white macadamia on its own too. Like I would definitely,
Yeah.
and it's a mellow flavor too. It's not like it's
Yeah,
gonna
man.
overpower the dish. That actually might be a great combo.
Yeah, or yeah. I mean, something like that. Because I mean, I assume you still want to use like that cinnamon side a little bit, so I feel like that would complement it a little bit. Like yeah, like if you were to do like a red velvet, I think that'd be too much, right? But I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I think that'd be kind
Yeah.
of nasty. I was thinking too, like when I've seen like Reese's has cookies up on the shelf, and I think they do like Reese's Pieces and a peanut butter cookie or something. Like
Ah, yeah,
peanut butter, cinnamon, chocolate. Like it's
yeah. Well,
possible. It's possible.
yeah. I mean, like, what has cinnamon toast crunch had? I feel like that'd be an interesting combination. Like, if they've had different iterations of things, like, do they mix in marshmallows in there? I assume they probably mixed in some marshmallows in there, right? Like, I don't know, something like that could be interesting.
Man.
Yeah.
Or you could even line the cinnamon cookie dough with cinnamon toast crunch. Like you could put a
Mm.
layer of cinnamon toast crunch down on that cinnamon
Yeah.
dough roll and then roll the cookie. We got, I mean, this is definitely like, this is after hour type snacking for a lot of folks probably listening in right now, but I'm telling you, man, I'm telling you, just give it a shot and tell me
Huh.
what you think because, I mean,
Yeah.
I was in a different world in that first when I took that first bite and it just came hot out the oven and everything just kind of melted away. I was just like, man, this is I've never had something like this before. It's amazing.
I might take that shot on that. I mean, I do like to play around with cereal sometimes, like not to like pour milk in it, but to actually like use it in baking. Because I don't know, like yeah, like the Rice Krispie treats, they're they're good and all, but then and I think I've talked about before, like Captain Crunch, right? Having a Captain Crunch type of with marshmallows in there, like that's awesome. So yeah, if we could combine that with the cinnamon toast crunch with some cinnamon, yeah, maybe like a little nice glaze on top or something. Oh, because yeah, that crunch I think will go well with it. So all right,
And yeah, tons of options out there. I feel like keep experimenting. Really looking forward to making these again. But anyways, just wanted to throw that out there in the ether. Week 14 in the books. We'll see how it goes this weekend. Folks, if you're still around, subscribe, like, comment. Go check out the Sharps app if you want to play some bets and talk about it with some new friends out there on this social media app for sports betting. And then, yeah, if you're looking to kind of stay fit this winter and get jacked up, go check out Titan Nutrition for all sorts of products. You'll get 10% off if you use our code. But anyways, for Wayne and Patrick, thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.